The Winnipeg Jets have made multiple moves, and ahead of their big game against the Florida Panthers, they made some interesting moves, one involving an interesting player. We also have some major updates surrounding Logan Stanley. We have some other things to go over today. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we get into it, quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. This is the first video on Winnipeg Jets Digest. We're going to be producing daily Winnipeg Jets content and, of course, doing post-game videos, so stay tuned for all that. And again, if you're new, hit the subscribe button. You're going to want to be the first subscribers here. The channel is going to grow fast, so make sure to do that. Darius, a lot to go over today, and the Winnipeg Jets have a huge game against the Florida Panthers, a chance to get their revenge upcoming, and they made some moves. And we're going to start with one that isn't as big as some of the other ones, but it's still interesting, and that is Fabian Wagner. So he has been reassigned to the Moose, and I have some interesting thoughts on this. And again, he's a young player. I think this could be very good for him going forward. You can see this here. The Jets announced today that they have reassigned Fabian Wagner from the SHL to the Manitoba Moose. He's only 20, played 16 games, but for a young prospect like this, getting him involved in the Jets system, more hands-on with the Manitoba Moose, it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be big, hopefully, for his development. That doesn't have a huge impact on the Jets right now or anything like that, but definitely still something to cover. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's as simple as that. I think it's so the Winnipeg Jets as an organization can be more hands-on with this player. So he can come over from the SHL where he hasn't done too much this season. He is still a young player with a lot of promise, but he is already 20 years old, and the Jets probably want him over in North America playing for the Manitoba Moose so they could work with him with the skill coaches and all of that and getting used to life over in North America and, just getting him ready, developing him so maybe one day he can be in the NHL. Obviously a 6th-round pick just a couple years ago. So he's still a ways away from the NHL, but I think it's a good thing that he's going to be over now with the Manitoba Moose and getting, some North American action as well, because the game is different over here as well. It's more physical. So I think they want to get him acclimated to this type of game.
Yeah, and again, for a young player, it's going to be a huge change for him moving all the way to Canada, but getting involved with a lot of the coaching staff and just seeing what, and again, we'll be playing with some players that have been around a bit longer, know what it takes to be in the NHL to a degree, or at least the experience, training camp and all those things there. So he's only 20. He has a lot of room ahead of him. And again, it's going to be interesting to see and to keep up with a lot of these prospects. So make sure to, stay tuned for him. Maybe down the line, he'll have some sort of impact on the team. But let's focus on some other things now. Let's focus on, of course, Logan Stanley. So Scott Arniel said that Logan Stanley will be on the next NHL Winnipeg Jets road trip, although Arniel doesn't believe the defenseman will get on the ice for the next 4 or 5 days. So it seems like at this point, his return is pretty imminent here. And again, to some Jets fans' happiness, to the majority, at least if, from a lot of things we've heard from Jets fans, to their dismay, Logan Stanley's return is imminent. Again, we'll dive into the lines and things like that. It seems like they've played a little bit worse as of late without Logan Stanley. Now, I'm not directly contributing that to Logan Stanley not being there. I don't think he's that impactful of a player personally. That being said, they're missing some physicality in the blue line. They've had Hayden Fleury step in. You have other guys like Ville Heinola on the come-up, which we'll discuss in a minute. But it seems like on the injury front, he's nearing a return.
Yeah, he's going to be back soon. And if you look at their schedule upcoming as well, he's going to make the road trip because they're on a hefty road trip. They're on the road a lot after this upcoming game tomorrow night against the Florida Panthers, which is a pretty big game in itself at home. You want some revenge there. Not only a win, I think you want to win big, but they're on the road quite a bit over the next little bit to end the month. So obviously he's going to make the road trip because I don't think he's, going to be kept out that entire time. So he's going to join the team at some point. And obviously Hayden Fleury has been in the lineup as well, and he hasn't been a difference maker by any means, but we've seen the comments and we see everything online. Logan Stanley, not too liked by Jets fans, that is for sure. But obviously I think, he's a guy who has NHL experience, has played in the NHL. So I think, at times you probably want him, if you're Scott Arniel, at least you probably want him in the lineup over somebody from the AHL, let's say, or a younger player because he has more NHL experience. I think, there's a lot put into that from management, more so than I think fans realize. So he is going to be a big part of this team moving forward, whether you like it or not, if you're a Jets fan, unfortunately. But, they could add at the deadline as well. If they're going to add anything, it's probably defense. We've talked about it in previous videos as well on, Hat-Trick HQ, of course. This is the first Jets Digest video, but, they can add at the defensive position and maybe Logan Stanley comes out that way. But I think it's pretty interesting. And like you mentioned, Heinola as well. I mean, he's dealt with, it's not his fault. He's dealt with a lot of injury problems over the last couple of years and trying to get back up to speed and back into the lineup. So maybe we see him at some point too. But I think, again, if you're Scott Arniel, Logan Stanley has NHL experience, and I think that is a big factor as to why he's still in the lineup and why he'll continue to be in the lineup when he comes back from injury.
Yeah, and you mentioned the schedule. It's looking very rough, and it's interesting with Stanley. Love and hate relationship to a degree. We saw some flashes of, not brilliance at all, but some playoff goals against the Habs a few years ago in 2021. But you're looking at it here. You look at the lines. So you obviously have Scheifele, the classic lines, and ahead of a game against the Panthers, nothing has really changed either side. Either the forwards or the defensemen. A lot of it has remained the same. We're seeing the same lineup we saw last game against the Florida Panthers, just hopefully this time with a different outcome. So obviously, Morrissey, DeMello, Sandberg, Pionk, Hayden Fleury, Colin Miller. And that's the big thing here now is that bottom piece. We discussed, of course, on Hat Trick HU, but regarding, if they're going to have to make any moves at the deadline, it's going to have to be for a blue liner and probably one to go in that third pairing, because even if you get Logan Stanley back, I'm not entirely sold. And I think if there's areas to improve with this team, it would be, in this case, replacing Hayden Fleury, maybe Colin Miller, but he's been playing fine. Hayden Fleury or Logan Stanley if he comes back. But you also have a prospect, if you can still consider him a prospect, he's been around for so long, that you got in the Jacob Trouba trade along with Neal Pionk way back. And that's Ville Heinola, who's been a prospect who's battled with injuries a ton. At times, he was one of the more highly touted defensive prospects in all of the NHL. They, of course, drafted him with their own first-round pick that they acquired from the New York Rangers. So it's been a long time coming for him. Maybe this is his chance now to slide in for Hayden Fleury while we wait for Logan Stanley to return again. 4 or 5 days he'll get on the ice. I suspect to return the next week or so, but you mentioned it. They play a ton. They play, of course, tomorrow, and then they play a back-to-back on the 22nd and the 23rd against the Penguins and the Predators. And they're playing some decent teams here, and the Panthers on home ice, and then a big, lengthy road trip. So they need to get off to a hot start against the Panthers on this long, grueling schedule to finish off November, and that can be done. Maybe we'll see Heinola on one of these second nights of a back-to-back to give someone else some rest, but maybe Logan Stanley will come back as well. There's a lot of maybes at this point for this team, specifically the blue line. But that being said, they're still 15-3. They've been playing really good hockey, and I'm not concerned whatsoever about their ability to come out, and quite frankly, I think they'll have a statement win tomorrow against the Panthers.
I think they're going to have to. They've started the season fantastic, so you don't want to go on a bit of a slide here either. And you know what? They can beat the Florida Panthers. I think, a game like that was bound to happen for the Jets. They've been so locked in to start the year. And I think that was a good point. Like you mentioned, Heinola could get into the lineup here in the next couple of games. There's a couple back-to-backs. They play every other night. But at the same time, if Logan Stanley comes back in pretty short order here, I could see him going right back into the lineup, and Heinola will take a back seat once again. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch depending on when Logan Stanley comes back into the lineup. But, I would like to see him get a shot. Heinola, this is in the lineup, and I think a lot of Jets fans would too. But like I said, I think management and coaching hold experience in very high regard. So I think it's going to be Logan Stanley. If he is healthy, he'll come back into the lineup, whether you like it or not, unfortunately. But it looks like it's going to be that way. But it's going to be interesting. It's a busy schedule to end the month, so anything can happen. We're going to see how the lineup shapes up.
Yeah, and one other note before we wrap up, Neal Pionk was fined $5,000. If you saw the clipping, I mean, he's done it before against Connor Bedard, similar instance. It's a fine warranted. We saw some worse things over the weekend with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Ryan Reeves getting suspended for his hit on Darnell Nurse. So I'm happy he didn't get suspended. I don't think a suspended was warranted, but I understand the $5,000 fine. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know down below what your thoughts are in the comment section. And again, if you're new here, get on the train early, hit the subscribe button. Thank you guys for your continued support. We'll see you later.